you getting ready for your 420 Easter? Welcome back. It's Blacklisted Radio. My name is Doug Owen. It's the 19th day of April, 2014. The website's blacklistedradio.com. We do this show live Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. Or for you out there on the West Coast, unbelievably crazy early for a Saturday morning. That's okay. It's a podcast. You can catch up with us on iTunes, YouTube, Roku, Stitcher Radio, a lot of different outlets. And, of course, most importantly, check out the website dedicated to the show. It's blacklistedradio.com. Where to start? We're going to talk about the police state. We're going to talk about Harry Reid. We're going to talk about geopolitics. Things are degrading or deteriorating quite quickly in Ukraine. I think we should just momentarily talk about the sideshow that's happening there. It's very real. It's very dangerous times for the people in Ukraine. We saw this coming to fruition for a time now. It was only a matter of time before what's taking place now happened. And that is that you're starting to see the frost removed from the pumpkin, all of the good feelings and revolutionary feelings that the people once had about being part of the EU and part of this coup d'etat. It's starting to wear off. I mean, you bring in the IMF, you double the gas prices on the average people, you institute harsh austerity on a pretty impoverished public, and amazingly enough, people are not thrilled about this. So in eastern Ukraine, the story is that there are a bunch of militants, pro-Russian militants, that are taking over cities, councils, taking over military equipment. You have the defection of Ukrainian troops taking their APC vehicles and what military hardware they have and joining the Russian pro-military forces. Not that they're necessarily Russian. Putin has said, and I believe him, that these are not Russian soldiers, but you have a lot of militants throughout the country. What's really amazed me is the fact that the Ukrainian people seem so indifferent. They don't seem to really be that vested in either side. I mean, if you casually allow a militia to take over your city council building in Donetsk or one of these other towns, I mean, you really just have no investment in what's happening in the political future. You probably don't see either side being that much different, other than maybe you're kind of I guess they have to be supportive in some role, because to just not care, to be indifferent, is to have a very strong opinion, and that says quite a lot, even though it doesn't seem to say much. And I know that sounds kind of weird, but it's true. When you don't care either way about the future of your country, or you don't see there being any difference between the Russians and the pro-Western Yats bunch that is currently holding positions until the referendum, until maybe, who knows what you get. They're launching these anti-terrorist missions, which is pretty hypocritical. The whole situation really is. You have these protesters, doing the same things that the pro-Maiden protesters were doing, but just against the pro-Maiden forces, and all of a sudden these guys are selectively terrorists. The other guys were freedom fighters. You had Clooney and other media darlings hailing these people as heroes and patriots. You have Victoria Nuland and the other neocons and world bankers giving them cookies and presents, and John McCain hooking up with right-wing fascist types, talking about how patriotic and uniquely American-esque these people are, which is accurate, but not for the reasons that John McCain was alluding to. It's pretty silly. And so now you have these words like terrorists and anti-terror units being thrown around out there. Well, Zbigniew Brzezinski, he's come out of the woodwork. He wants the Americans to give these guys weapons. Not surprising to me that they want to arm up and give the Ukrainian military more and more weapons. which, if you think about this, is a pretty stupid idea. And Zygmunt Brzezinski, he thinks he's brilliant. He was touting his idea. Let's arm these people. But if you just take, just 2 seconds to think about this, you see that you have basically a good contingent of the Ukrainian military defecting. Okay, so you want to give these guys weapons? What are they going to do with those weapons? Are they going to give it to pro-Russian militants to use potentially against the Ukrainian government? Yes. And so I always come to this conclusion that either people, these worldly academics and thinkers like Zygmunt Brzezinski have to be, borderline. I think that they're compartmentalized, but, borderline retarded in their geopolicies, or they're just that. I don't know. I'm starting to veer. I used to think that these guys were really, really brilliant, and it was very maniacal and well thought out. Now I just wonder if these people aren't just senility driven. You just have a bunch of really old, crazy guys like Zygmunt and Kissinger and the bunch that are completely removed from the reality that is happening. So anyway, you give the weapons, and then they would end up right in the hands of who knows who, right? Maybe Chechen militants, maybe others. So that's a really bad idea. You don't need Doug Owen to tell you that that's a bad idea, because it will be used on the people or against the people that we are trying to support and protect, and we're giving money to, and we're paying their gas bill from Gazprom with. Doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? Anyway, the silliness of war is apparent, and I think just the talking points and the preparations from the West and idiots like John Kerry, who, they're more interested in their yachts. I do believe this than in putting forth any kind of, I think, strategic plan for Western dominism. That's not even working out too well. Look at what's happening in Afghanistan. If you think that this is the intent, that this is part of P2OG and just destroying and rebelizing the nations, yeah, I guess that maybe they've reached that. I don't know. I don't want to give them too much credit. Anyway, Harry Reid, one of the other people out there, just like the Ukrainian government, just like the White House and other Democrats, loves to use the word terrorism. So let's talk about it, because he said that the people that are at the Bunkerville Rancher, that's what they're calling him, Bunkerville Rancher Cliven Bundy, are domestic terrorists. Now, of course, he is a senator from Las Vegas, or from Nevada. I think it covers Las Vegas. Maybe not. He's a senator. He's a bigwig. He is somebody that is quotable, and he said during an appearance at the Las Vegas Review-Journal, quote, hashtags and headlines event at the Paris, which I assume is a casino. He says, quote, I repeat, what happened there was domestic terrorism. So these are, quote, nothing more than domestic terrorists. So he's very clear in the fact that he believes that all of the people out there, the alternative media, primarily because there's so many of those characters from the alternative media and the right-wing, somewhat right-wing, I hate to use that term. I would say many of the militia and anti-state, maybe not separatists, but people that believe that they are separate from the system that currently is in operation today. The current occupiers of the rogue government that is the United States of America, that is the BLM, the Bureau of Land Management. So people are standing in opposition to the legitimacy of that state and to the powers that be. And I applaud that. Civil disobedience is the key to bringing anything to the forefront. Unfortunately, in our society today, I've come to the conclusion that you have to, throw some bodies onto you have to set some people on fire before anybody will pay attention. Case in point, Vietnam. Okay, people are like, oh man, there's look at all these coffins, the horror of being forced into war. But it was really when people started to self-immolate and burn their bodies where people could no longer ignore the horror of war. So it's not funny, although it does seem somewhat comical in the approach when you look at what's happening in the Ukraine, when you look at what's happening right here in Nevada. I try not to personalize or identify too much with, Cliven Bundy, because he himself, I think, has transcended. People will focus on him, and I think that, anybody, insert any person that believes that they've had enough in their life and they're tired of something, that they've taken the country boy stance of, if you don't stand for something, you'll die for nothing. Hey, regardless, and I would, and at this point in his life, when you're 72 years old and you owe the federal government $1 million, you're on a trajectory to maybe nowhere, or just giving all your stuff up when you die. Ultimately, that's what happens to most people in America, and they are definitely focusing more on that initiative with inheritance laws and all of the state regulations that are making sure those fat cats can't give people like Paris Hilton too much money. And that's the case in point. That's the archetype that they use for that. But anyway, I think it's important to note that, one, when he talks about the domestic terrorists, he's pretty much talking about the alternative media. He's talking about Pete Santilli. He's talking about Oath Keepers. He's talking about these individual groups. And don't think that they're not being targeted and will be used as examples of domestic terrorism. Now, domestic terrorism has a pretty broad and vague term now, usage according to Harry Reid. And that is anybody that resists the state, stands up using non-aggression principles. Okay, and he's somebody that would sit there and just, pay lip service to MLK. He has. Oh, I listened to this, and he's all about civil disobedience, and he's all about Rosa Parks, and, according to himself, according to his lies that he tells himself. And maybe at one point Harry Reid actually had a soul. Nonetheless, I'll give him that, maybe. This idea that anyone that resists the government, that believes that they could use a non-aggression principle, although, it's not aggression, but there's a lot of guys with AK-47s running around fully armed, so it's hard to take that high road, that moral high road, when you're armed to the teeth. And, this doesn't give any way to the BLM instituting a no-fly zone, instituting free speech zones, where you get your Constitution-allowed zone to yell at yourself in a little cage. Your Constitution-free zone in the prison. That's what it's been ultimately relegated to. And so not to give any credence to that, or the tactics, or to just tasing people. Because when you look at the actual aggression and the violence for either one of these sides, whether you're for the BLM going after this non-fee-paying, tax-dodging, welfare rancher, whether you're on the side of the state going after him, and I've seen those little infographics or the little memes from Daily Kos and all of these leftist sites. Let's go after Cliven Bundy. Let's get him. Let's go. Round him up. He needs to pay his taxes. He needs to be part of the collective. He's not doing his fair share. Hello, Karl Marx, channeling socialists of years past, putting it into a bumper sticker. You know where I'm going. So there's a lot of that. And I do think that what he's doing has much value, because it sure is. It is showing a lot of people's faces. It's definitely doubling down and showing everyone's hands. Harry Reid has shown his, calling these people domestic terrorists, basically equating them to people like Osama bin Laden, even though they're the ones that are being tased. They're the ones that were being aggressed against. They haven't fired any shots, and so it's a little premature. And it's not even really a political ideology, although you could say that they use terror, but who's really using terror? I can't see how any of these people on this ranch, other than some pretty snide remarks from some of these characters like Sheriff Mack, I had no idea, but I don't want to go down that path. The people here can stand on their individual merits. I'm neither pro nor con in what really I think for the people that are there, because you don't know most of them. So I don't know why they're doing what they're doing. So you can't really speak to that. I can't anyway. I don't think anybody can. I don't know why any individual has gone there. What point in their life they've come to where they think that this is a great idea. And I think a lot of people have been so mediatized by, and so I think emotionally hurt by media and by the alternative media. And I'm not saying that in jest. I mean, people are emotionally tied to these radio shows. They're emotionally tied to what's happening in a very, very primal way. And so I hear that, and people that listen to a lot of that media end up getting to these points where they just feel mania, panic. Glenn Beck's a fine one out there, although he's standing with Democracy Now! That's why I'm glad, because now you see Democracy Now! And their agenda. Just listen to Amy Goodman. If you look at Snopes is a fine example. They're going after Harry Reid, saying all of this conspiracy about they're speaking to the conspiracy about Harry Reid and the Chinese and the solar power plants. Now, who funds Snopes? George Soros. Who funds Harry Reid? Well, if you look at his opposition and you look at who pays him, George Soros. Okay, so you have Amy Goodman. Okay, now, where does she get a lot of the endowments and the money for Democracy Now!, the nonprofit? Not that they don't do good work, I'm just saying, same people. Same, Endowment for Democracy, all these groups that, and you can just look at their Form 990 and look at who pays them. Not to say that they control the content or even the creative aspects or the journalistic independence or compromise that of people like Amy Goodman. But when you see how they feel about these people that dare protest, you see the hypocrisy. Because when it's against the state in these environmental issues or whatever it may be, immediately they show their colors. Okay, they're not for somebody standing up to the government. They're not for Rosa Parks. They're only for people that are fulfilling their agenda, and they just happen to be a few of those names that I threw out there in the civil rights movement, or you can find others that, from Chavez to trying to think of the guy's name, but anyway, I mean, you get the point there. Selective heroes doing selectively different things, but all of them, even going back to Gandhi. I mean, the whole point was to show the state, or to show the state for who they are by being peaceful, by not aggressing. And that's what we've had so far. And those are the people that challenge Harry Reid. Those are the people that scare the Democrats, because they cannot have opposition to the state. Now, whether or not he really is going to profit from that story, Snopes, which, I mean, a lot of times they've had some pretty compelling pieces. I don't know about their reliability on every issue, but they're one of those groups that they're so big that they at least have to prove what they're saying. So it's a valid retort, whether it's true or not, and whether or not Harry Reid's personally vested, and that's why he's calling people terrorists. Regardless, I don't care. He set the bar. So Saudi Arabia, we'll just shift gears here and look at some other terrorists. Saudi Arabia is providing hundreds of anti-tank missiles to the mercenaries in Syria. Wow, that's pretty interesting, considering that anti-tank missiles, MPADs, when in the hands of people like Eric Haroon, the posthumously remembered Eric Haroon here on this show, they're terrorists. These are weapons of mass destruction. So I want some kind of accountability. I want some kind of, standardization of what terrorism is. Because if I think about this, and I know that they hope most of you don't think about this, but if I think about the fact that we're charging terrorists with weapons of mass destruction, if you have a rice cooker or a pressure cooker in a bombing event in downtown Boston, then you have a weapon of mass destruction. Now, when we provided those those same exact devices and taught the previous Al-Qaeda, the Mujahideen, and other Wahhabist groups how to do this, other Chechen rebels and all the people that were fighting with Russians. You just fast forward 40 years and you realize we're in the exact same spot that we were back then, except we're fighting Russia in the Crimea, we're fighting Russia geopolitically in Ukraine, we're going to be fighting Russia, and now more so in Syria, and we're fighting Russia and Iran. Now, that's the next wave of this. So an array of anti-tank missiles, according to Voltaire, and this is all over the place, New York Times, AP, these missiles were being used to fight against the Syrian army, and they are the BGM-71 TOWs. So these are being given to Turkish mercenaries. Now, we know about the Turkish false flag. Not that it's really a false flag. It's just business as usual, but it's another one of these tactics, though it didn't come to fruition. It didn't actually happen. I think even with Seymour Hersh, who I hold him at bay because I imagine he has to be a CIA spook. But there are people that are inside of the agency, that are inside of government, that are leaking things that want the public to know what's happening, because they actually are doing this because they believe in what's right in their minds. They do believe that there is a moral obligation for the United States to intervene and go after bad guys. So, that's why I think that you can take some of what Cy Hersh says with a lot of credit, and the fact that now, months after the mainstream media has done everything it can, consider who owns and controls them for the most part, have done everything they can to squash that story. Nonetheless, it's getting harder and harder and harder, and there are more and more examples of the Jordanians training alongside the Turks, training terrorists and giving them weaponry. So Saudi Arabia is launching and waging a proxy war in Syria, destabilizing the country, and that has been in their best interests. And they don't want, when it comes to what the Sauds are all about and what they have really have to gain and lose in this equation, I think it's becoming more evident than whatever it is. They're okay with everyone knowing their position. I don't imagine most of the actual, hardcore Muslims and the like that, would, I can't imagine most people that believe or anti-West and that believe that the United States is the boogeyman of the world can support the Saudi Arabian government, because obviously, they lay the foundational work for the intervention and the genocide the U.S. military conducted in Iraq. So they host many U.S. bases. So if you're really, some Al-Qaeda radical, if you're really some guy that hates the West, you probably hate Saudi Arabia. So I almost consider them to be the West. They are always in the equation, and they're part of OPEC, and they've played their role, and of course, King Abdullah and all of the rest have profited heavily from their relationship with the West, exporting oil to the West and the like. So it's been an equitable relationship. Bandar Bush, I don't know what he said to Obama on their little visit, but it must not have been good. They must be looking at what they're doing and the destabilization of Syria. This is just my guess. And probably been outspoken about working with the West and working with the U.S. and, things have changed. And it's time for him to exit stage left. But, he's one of the architects of the Iraq invasion. He's one of the big players and one of the liars that has often shown up with, site intelligence for the operations and all of the horrible things that they've done. So, another one of these appeasers, another one of these people that goes out there and just sells the state line for whoever, but obviously cross someone. Or maybe he's getting senile as well. These are old people. Bushes and Clintons and Abadullahs and Bin Sultan, and you just can't get rid of these guys. There definitely is a tide change. Some of the criminals, like Olmert in Israel, we all remember Olmert. He actually went to jail. So there's something going on over there. I think there's definitely a few different regimes and a few different thought processes that are happening inside of the government. Nonetheless, the hypocrisy, the idiocy of giving these kind of weapons to Al-Qaeda should be evident to everyone. I mean, anybody who believes in what the U.S. is doing and military, Western, military dominism, or any of that stuff, any of those isms, has to question this at least a little bit. Well, I think that people are starting to catch on a little bit when it comes to what's happening in the world today. Case in point, 37% of voters now fear the federal government. They fear the government. They should. They've seen wars being waged against innocent people. You got Harry Reid calling anyone who is a civil disobedient a dissident, a terrorist, basically equating it to that. He's not just the only one. He's just the latest guy. He's the recent headline. He's the latest guy to call people like you and I terrorists. Not surprising. I knew that was coming a long time ago when we started this podcast. 37% of voters now fear the federal government. I guess I'm one of the 43. Or what is it? Yeah, the 43 that do not fear the federal government. 37% of likely U.S. voters. Think about who those people may be. Who's a likely U.S. voter? Old white people. You are being targeted. 37% of old white people. Just say that jest. I'm getting seasoned myself. I'm in that demographic, as a matter of fact. Of likely U.S. voters now fear the federal government, according to Rasmussen Reports National Telephone Survey. Hello? Then you got to think about who's got the landline, too. Who's picking up the phone here? Perhaps, in part, that's because 54% consider the federal government today a threat to individual liberty than just a protector of it. Shocking stuff here. People think the federal government's the boogeyman instead of Big Brother and Osama bin Laden, Obama bin Robin. Slightly more, 24% are now undecided. There's always the indifference. There's always the confused people. Huh? I can't hear you on my old potline telephone. So anyway, I guess it's good. Just 22% see the government as a protector of individual rights, and that's down from 30% last November. 8% of the population, that's almost 10%. That's 1 in 10. That's 8% of the population from last year to this year has had an epiphany, has had a change of heart when it comes to the federal government. Never before have they had so much, I think, ability to reach people, and we've never seen so much money being poured into politics. Obama garnered more than over, $1 billion for the 2012 election? Unprecedented. Huge amounts of money to tell you that this guy's better than that guy. I don't know how effective, or it has to be somewhat effective. I mean, this is another statistic that might be real. 94% of the time, the guy with the most money wins. And you can apply that beyond politics. You can apply that to just about anything. If you can lawyer up, if you can pay to play, you're going to do better than others. So I think it's notable that people think the government are the domestic terrorists. Now, the terrorist like Harry Reid, and he is a terrorist, Harry, Dirty Harry, and I don't know, he's been getting beat up. He keeps coming to the floor with these bruises all over his face. I don't know if he's getting different facelifts or he's falling over. They're roughing him up. You better call those Bundy Cliven people domestic terrorists. I don't know, but I wonder. I really do. Anyway, he can call us domestic terrorists all he likes. The people have spoken. It's the government that takes away your rights. It's the government that has a political agenda to harm you. And that, my friends, is terrorism. Here you go. Illinois cop seize computers and cell phones in search for Twitter account mocking mayor. Now, Here's the deal. Twitter is great because you don't have to do much to get yourself an account, and you can have one of these faux, funny, fake accounts that people have. You have different political figures, tons of them that have their own joking or comedic accounts that are not related, don't have the little check mark next to their names. Obviously not the real people, the real celebrities or politicians. So anyway, the point here is that these people are out of control, and I was surprised to hear that it was in Peoria, Illinois, somewhere I've been, and you would think kind of a progressive state. Police in Peoria, though, seized computers and cell phones while attempting to find a person responsible for a satirical Twitter account mocking the town's mayor. The Peoria Journal-Star reported that authorities executed a search warrant, really, at home Tuesday night in connection with an investigation into @Peoria Mayor account, which reportedly represented itself as belonging to Mayor Jim Ardis, pictured above, and you can look at him there, and he looks like a fascist, which reportedly represented itself belonging to the mayor. The account was suspended earlier this year, but not before adding a line stating it was satirical in nature. However, it still used the mayor's name, email address, and biography, and posted content related to sexual activity and drugs, including a comparison between artists and the Toronto mayor, Rob Ford, who has admitted to using drugs during his time in office. He's mounting his new campaign, which is pretty funny, and you should look into Rob Ford. He's going to be putting out some great content that we could play on the show, probably. The thing I love about Rob Ford is that he is just as bad as every other one of these politicians. They are every bit as bad as Rob Ford, probably do things that are worse. Marion Barry comes to mind, a few other politicians getting caught smoking crack, hanging out with hookers. Elliot Spitzer has a TV show. He got caught with a hooker and, a Wall Street bad boy, regulator. Anyway, nonetheless, there's plenty of hilarity that comes along with Rob Ford, and he's just so candid. He's like, hey, look, I only smoke crack when I get wasted on a bender. I mean, who can argue with that? It's a great moral. And here's the thing. It's when you look at people like Harry Reid, just bang him up and down today. Somebody else is. We're not the ones bruising the guy. He pretends that he's altruistic. He pretends that he's a good guy, that he's not a fascist. I like Rob Ford for at least admitting his. And here's the deal. The account here says not Jim Ardis, and he has a little Nazi mustache on the guy. Anyway, the fact that they would execute search warrants because somebody is mocking the town mayor, somebody who's pretty insignificant, that Peoria, Illinois, they could find a judge who should be disbarred for this, and probably will be, because this is getting national attention. It's important to show you that people are really upset about the balance of power in independent media. Okay, and this satirical account, is a fine example where you have these fascists that want complete control. They're the type of people that search for government. They're the kind of people that want to be there, and they have no humor. They can't understand that they're totally out of touch. Don't realize that everyone reading Twitter is taking it with a grain of salt and probably giving him a little bit more, notoriety. It's not, statistically, it's not going to change his chances of becoming the mayor again or re-election. How many people in Peoria, Illinois actually go to Twitter to, talk politics? Probably, I don't know. Not enough to make a dent in a percentage point in your campaign, more than likely. So it shows me that these people, one of the reasons that they are fascist is because they are ignorant. They don't understand how the world works. They want to control everything. They're control freaks and usually egomaniacs, and that's why they feel so offended by somebody joking about smoking crack, for God's sakes. But, I want to see all of these people properly sued, because That's what happens. I mean, during the Boston bombing, during the marathon bombing, or the result of, was a door-to-door, kick-down police state grabbing and searching of citizens. It happens in New York City every day. Notably, this week, they shut down the Muslim targeting bureau, or whatever it was, the Muslim surveillance committee. And, we're all supposed to be excited about that. Oh, that's great. Great. Another example, though, of how they're trying to silence people. And I think it's great because it shows that we do have that much effect. Somebody just starting a Twitter account can really get the police up in an uproar and get some judge to, this guy's going to get paid, number one. You could be so lucky as to get paid for millions of dollars for just putting together a satirical account for Peoria, Illinois' mayor. That's the way I look at it. And maybe that's kind of a macabre way to look at the police state. I'm just waiting to get hit in the head for some bull crap or get fired because of my political beliefs. Because I'll make a ruckus and they'll pay me millions of dollars. I kind of look at it that way now. So I don't feel so bad for the people. I'm like, you're not a victim. You're going to get a payday. You're going to get off the grid, man. How awesome is that? Or at least an opportunity to. Speaking of getting off the grid, one of the other stories I got here in the bin today, police began spying on every citizen in real time. Thank you, Google. And persistent surveillance systems. A retired Air Force veteran named Ross McNutt is trying to get his nut. It's an Ohio-based company that he runs, Persistent Surveillance Systems. They have persuaded the L.A. County Sheriff's Department, not a shocker there, to use his surveillance technology to monitor Compton streets from the air and track suspects from the moment the snatching occurs. And you should see this. Pretty high tech. And they've got this whole city on lockdown. Compton's not a friendly place, and I'm sure they got a lot of crime, and that's what the police department has to deal with, is abject poverty and bad socialist policies, really, engendering huge mass ghetto wards, doing people a huge disservice. And, if you want your free government lunch, that's great, but, one of the side effects of that is being centralized in a place you have no rights, and you ultimately become a victim to mass aggression and, God only knows what. God only knows what if you live in Compton. Thanks, government. Not that there aren't great places there, but the reason it's so blighted, Compton wasn't always a scary, scary place, but when you just start centralizing and putting up massive amounts of government housing, guess what happens? Turns the whole place into a ghetto. Because people that, it's just the fact of life. It's not saying that we shouldn't have assisted living, but when you centralize it, and everybody always does, because guess what? Nobody wants it in their backyard. Okay, you have a $250,000 ranch home in Compton. You didn't want that mega building, that 500 apartment mega ghetto put up right behind your home, more than likely. Now, then you probably can stop the government from doing it because it's, central planning at its finest. But we have that here, and I guess there's two sides to that argument, but there's always somebody that loses and somebody who loses. The people that lived there before you put the manifestation, they lost, and then the people that you put in it lose. So, there's a lot of, feel-good stories about people getting out of the ghetto, but I don't know. You're being put into a biometric surveillance grid here. So anyway, his product is a live version of Google Earth. McNutt. He says it's like TiVo. It's got TiVo capabilities, which is intriguing but vague. It also sounds a lot like the plot of a terrible Denzel Washington movie. This according to Mass Private Eye. And I agree. But there's been some great Denzel Washington movies that explain the police state. More specifically, PSS outfits planes with an array of super high-resolution cameras that allow a pilot to record a 25-square-mile patch of Earth It's pretty easy, and you can get that up on one of those, cheap Wi-Fi hotspot drones, some government refuse. There's plenty of those, so, I mean, every town, your local police department will probably get a grant for its own drone with its own eye in the sky if they don't already have that there. Where I live, we've got a very, very present police state. You know, one of the things about domestic surveillance is that it's a two-way street. You know, I like the fact that we all surveil one another. I hate the fact that we surveil one another. I hate the fact that everybody has a camera. I love the fact that everybody has a camera. So every once in a while, for you out there that have been victims of the state or empathize with them, people that think, this is just wrong. You see the cops getting away with complete impunity, doing things that are just wrong, illegal, horrible. This California TV station ended up filming this dog that's playing with these kids. It's a pit bull, red-nosed pit bull, kind of red and white spotted. You can check out the video. It's at blacklistednews.com. And they have it, and they're playing with their owners, these kids. Docile, sweet, just hanging out. Well, anyway, this cop just moments before was trying to shoot this ravaging beast. Just moments before, but ended up shooting himself in the leg. California deputy, according to Raw's story, accidentally shot himself while trying to kill a dog that he said was threatening his life on Wednesday, but a video captured by a local television station showed the animal much smaller than reported, peacefully playing with children. That's right, this monster beast of all of 35 pounds, maybe 40 pounds. It's a shorty. It's a real short little pit bull. I maybe it could be kind of scary. They make a lot of noise. But at the end of the day, I mean, you're a police officer. You're wearing boots. You can kick this thing in the neck if you're really that scared. It's somebody that has to. This is my point over and over again. I make somebody that feels that they have to shoot a dog barking at them that can be tamed by children in this case, but just in general. Okay, number one, don't you have a taser? Can't you use a taser? And isn't that what it's really for? And my God, I mean, there's not very many. I mean, even the big bull mastiffs. I mean, they're big dogs. I don't fear them. Now, I understand if this cop was, a young female cop, 120 pounds, by herself, in Compton, without the surveillance gear backing her up, without her robot companion. That's what they have now. Go to blacklistednews.com. There's a lot of crazy tech stuff, and it's all being weaponized and for the police because they got the budgets. You and I aren't buying robot maids. But the police department wants to buy robot dogs. It's simple economics. Everybody getting into robotics just happens to want to sell this equipment to the military. It's just happening to be funded by DARPA. It's where the money's at. Nonetheless, whatever kind of companion technology, Google Glass, now they have Google. They've already started patenting and probably will be able to bring the retinal arrays. So you can get all of your information on your contact lenses. All the things that just seem so wacky and crazy and conspiratorial, talking about them 5-10 years ago are here now. But regardless of all of the technology that you may or may not have in the patrol car, the fact that you got to shoot the dog, you can't just grab it. I mean, if you're a guy like my size or even somewhat smaller, I mean, if you weigh more than, 180 pounds, and I would say most police officers do, a dog that weighs 100 pounds just doesn't intimidate me. I would grab that dog's throat and squeeze it if I thought I had to. He might bite me, but I would gouge his eyeballs out. I don't get this. It's just, I don't want to be hurt mentality, or the fact that we just have, a wussy engendered generation of people now entering law enforcement. I think there's a lot to be said for that. Real men get thrown out of the police department. Cryy, whiny, bitchy people probably make their way up or down. And I would think that you'd have more hard asses that would be, doing patrol. A few other people out there that wouldn't be. I mean, the fact that you're pulling out your gun, it's dangerous, obviously, because you shot yourself in the freaking leg. And this is the funny thing, they talk about gun control all the time, and then you just look at police officers and the statistics for them hurting themselves with their guns. It exceeds by a long shot the amount of people that hurt themselves, general civilian types, although I don't like using that term either, but just average citizenry, average people end up, in a situation where they are a little bit more empowered than the police, and don't have a whole lot of common sense. Anyway, look at the video. It's pretty heartwarming. I actually am a pit bull owner. I know, God forbid, so scary, so hard now. It really is. It's one of these. It used to be the babysitter dog. People don't realize their value, and I think, unfortunately, you just have a bunch of bad owners because they are very dangerous dogs. They're very smart, and they're very, very protective, and so you have to understand that kind of ownership and what it entails. So you have a lot of people that don't and do not understand, tethering a dog outside will not only make it territorial and make it vicious. And you wonder why people chain there's certain types of people that would chain a pit bull behind their house, or a Staffordshire Terrier, or other bully breeds, whether it's a English bulldog, a boxer, and that dog's going to, of course, become a threat to anyone that comes in its path. It's very simple. So, it's like weapons. I hear this all the time, and people that are pro Second Amendment are, I hear it all the time, anti-pit bull, anti-dog. Well, let me tell you, a bull mastiff is a much bigger, more scary dog. The reason that you don't have so many of them attacking people is because you have to be pretty well off, pretty affluent to be able to afford a dog. You have to have a lot of space to own a dog of that size. Same thing with Rottweilers. Other, I guess, so-called vicious dogs. They can be vicious. They already have a predator instinct, and it's very, prominent. And that's the shame in it, is that people, the dogs are so valuable in that sense, but people that own them are idiots, and they have been pretty much, just like most things that are great tools, like firearms, that are great in the hands of people that understand and respect them, they've become, they themselves, demonized. And so if you live in an apartment, you're not going to be able to, most places, own a pit bull any longer. If you live in California, I'm surprised that they even allow it. I'm surprised they haven't had a door-to-door roundup of pit bulls yet. But anyway, pit bull, by the way, is a generic term. And one of the things I'll just leave you with here, amongst other thoughts about domestic terrorism, Harry Reid and the proxy wars playing out, not only in our own backyards, but across the world, is that the people out there are completely being lied to in so many different facets. And that, you can't be for property rights and then buy into Harry Reid. You can't be for the Second Amendment and hate, people owning dogs that are vicious. It doesn't make much sense. But why do you have so many bad people in government and bad people in the police department? Here's one of the reasons, okay? These are the kind of TV show commercials that they play during daytime cop dramas and what are they? The judge shows, the different court shows that people watch, WAPNA. There's like 5 or 6 of them now. People love watching people get screwed over by the state. I don't know why, but they do. And the Washington Post had this, and it's just one of the many commercials. It's kind of a radio visual because you got to see the cops running around, and they're militarized. They've got their commando uniforms on. They're playing with tanks, and this is the kind of stuff that they run for daytime losers. They're looking for people to get, even though you can get a pretty decent salary. I guess one, they've got the AV budget. 2, they've got a need to put more people in these uniforms. They've got bigger budgets. But 2, maybe they just can't keep people there because, it just sucks being a cop. But, this is compelling. You know, if I didn't have a job and I was sitting around watching Wapner, I might go for this.
Hobbs Police Department is hiring, starting at $22.28 per hour and a 5-year incentive of $15,000. Pay for certified officers is $22.28 to $25.62 per hour.
I got the tank here.
$25,000 housing
hit
incentive
people with the
for
LRAD
5 years and $50,000 for 10.
shields.
This is an opportunity to be a member of the 20-year at 70% retirement plan.
I'm Chief.
Okay, and it shows them going into these people's house. It looks like grandma's house. It's a nice yellow house with a screen door. And you've got these guys in military gear, and they're just like kicking down the door. This is so tasteless. According to the New Mexico Watchdog website, this is a new recruiting video. Check it out at blacklistednews.com. It's so appalling that the neocon Washington Post is even appalled by it. People are pretty, I think, shocked. And it's so distasteful. You know, this town of 35,000, Hobbs, New Mexico, that they need people kicking down doors. And I mean, when you watch this video, it tells you the kind of people that they want. You know, are you willing to kick down grandma's door? Do you want to drive around in a tank? Do you want to shoot guns? Do you want to get $25,000 for housing, 5 years pay, $50,000 in 10 years? I mean, you can't get this in the retail world. Okay, you're not going to get this working at Walmart. You're not going to get this kind of money working at Red Lobster or other retail outlets that are hurting across the nation. You're not going to get this working at Dave & Buster's. I mean, this is a lot of money. And you get to rough up grandma. So anyway, this thing appalled enough people to where it became a national story. So check it out for yourself. I think that more and more people, 37% of us out there, are, and probably more, are feeling the breath of Harry Reid on the back of our necks and all of that horrific stuff that, unfortunately, is waking a lot of people up. And I think, fortunately, it's waking a lot of people up. Unfortunately, it is at the behest of all of us, or at the disinterest of us all and the Republic. So I want to thank all of you for being part of the show today. Lynn in Maryland, thank you. She donated $101, very generous. All of your contributions, of course, go to this show. The amount of time and effort that goes into just the aggregation of these articles and stories, but the fact that I spend literally 10 to 20 hours a week going through these stories so that I can even approach these topics and to have enough of an insight and comprehension that we can actually do these shows to give you the insider tips on what's happening inside of the alternative community, the alternative media, to be able to give you unbiased, commercial-free thoughts and analysis that do take a lot more time than the shows, though I'm expanding and doing a lot more on the radio realm, doing shows with Bob Tuskin on Wednesdays. Of course, the Doomcast. Go to doomcast.com. We've got really, I think, a great team of people like Craig Simpson and others that are going to be contributing to the website, to the network. We're doing all of this open source where anybody can take an initiative and contribute. If you want to support the podcast, you can do that. Anybody can. You can take our logoing. You can take anything, make your own T-shirts, sell them, give us a portion of the proceeds. We'll give you the same in return when it comes to advertising or giving you mentions on this show. So we thank everyone. We appreciate everyone that gives to the show, and we always properly give them back, hopefully, not only valuable information, entertainment primarily, I guess, because most of you listening are probably smarter than I and have more of an insight. And some of you actually have a lot more time and insight into a lot of what's happening. But regardless, you are supporting independent, commercial-free, non-agenda biased media when you support Blacklisted News, when you support this podcast, Doomcast, any of those different ventures. And it keeps us completely free and independent and able to say whatever it is that we want, to be able to look at products, whatever it may be, and give you honest analysis. Tyson in Oklahoma City, 101. I want to thank him. Or no, excuse me, 5252 James in Virginia donated $47 as well. And all of you, I want to thank all of you for making this endeavor worth doing, and to continue to support it by using your voice. Do that by going to the website, sharing socially, and letting other people know. But you can find some pretty good entertainment and a lot of valuable information by listening to Blacklisted Radio. All right, guys. Hope you have a great Easter. Of course, it's 4/19, which is a day that will live in infamy. So hopefully we'll make it through it without any shenanigans. So have fun at the fertility ritual and try not to eat too many chocolate bunnies. This is Doug Owen saying until next time, take care.